like, what do you mean?
I came to podcast today.
I came to do some things.
We came to do it today because, I'm sure these are questions that the listeners have. And it's a really good question because, it's always when people say to someone, oh, well, being an alcoholic or this or that or the other thing, I always say the first thing is acknowledgement. And if you don't have the acknowledgement and you don't think there's a problem, then there isn't a problem to you. So yeah. So here's the thing. I believe, I believe in a world of diversity. I believe for some folks, getting the lip gloss and looking pretty in the lip gloss is really just that. That's all it is for them. And that could be important for them. Like they're not thinking about what's happening in Davos. They're not thinking about whether the lip gloss is cruelty free. They're not thinking about that they could have used the $50 to go support a charity. Like it's not deeper than that for them. And that's real. Looking cute and taking pictures on Snapchat with a filter is their thing. It makes them happy. Their life it does not go beyond that. Makes perfect sense.
So for them, we wouldn't expect to feel distress or chronic stress. Maybe the distress shows up for them in that, like, now I have to get this lip gloss that's $250 per ounce.
Right.
And right. But I think I don't think that that's the average person. I think most of us are really in some way, whether we acknowledge it or not, I think most of us really are more deeply rooted to substantive things, that we really have a sense of our internal values. Now, that's not to say that many of us sit down and really think about them critically or reflect on them or can articulate them at the drop of a dime. But I do think most of us are more connected to character and who a person is and how they are and want those meaningful connections. And so for me, this line about where the stress or distress is so for me, distress is the sense of not being able to engage in self-regulation around stress. When you are so out of control, that it really does take something external to bring you back into control. Whether that something external is a prescribed medication, whether that external is a self-medication, whether that external is a activity or a behavior, something. But when you have to go outside of yourself to bring back some sense of calm, some sense of stasis, some sense of control, those are moments in which you are distressed.
And could that not be true for other things across the board? Like this is just one of the ways that distress manifests itself.
Yes.
Is that correct? Yeah. Okay.
Yes. This next part, I think, is what's really important and where the self-cast is going to happen. Where I think we all have so much role demand that we are all living in a state of chronic stress. And maybe not all, but I certainly know in the parts of the world, my personal world and where I operate, well, especially when I'm thinking about people of color, and then especially when I'm thinking about women of color, we are living in a state of constant chronic stress. And I think the question that you asked before about how do I know, like how does a person know that? How can we become attuned and acknowledge that? I think that's part of where we all have to do some better work for ourselves and to work to be a little bit more selfish and finding ways to get quiet, to get calm, to be able to figure that out for ourselves and then to be able to move beyond that. So the research on role overload is pretty clear. And what I find fascinating about this is that most of the research happens in the management business world around this idea of role overload. It's a psychological concept, but it is mostly used in business literature. And it's really simple, like most psychological concepts. Like the solution to reducing the effects of role overload or role strain is always related to reducing demands, increasing resources, or both of those things, one or the other or both.
And right. I use the colloquialism, better said than done. Right?
Mm-hmm. Which is why which is why I said that there's nothing new under the sun, and it is really simple, but doing it right. And this is why I've been really trying to consciously ask myself, like, how do I opt out? Because so I'll just give some examples from my personal life. You know what? I'll share with the listeners one of my personal social media posts from just this week.
Gentlemen, we are about to get Dupee deep with Dr. Nikki.
So I'm going to lay it all out. Just this Wednesday at 6:40 p.m. Central Standard Time, I posted, when you've been up since 6 a.m., gotten the kiddo to school, taught 2 classes, picked the kid up and taken her to ballet class, leave ballet only to sit in traffic for 40 minutes, but your child is giving a full concert of her original tunes about rabbits and cats, parentheses, think one person duet, and that's essentially what it was. So she's doing original tunes about rabbits and cats, knocking on doors, eating cupcakes, and fighting over toys, and being sent to jail. ... And there's still dinner, bath, and books to be had before you have any quiet time. ... You might be a little bit over Wednesday.
Can we just give a shout out to your daughter, though, for rabbits? And what is that? Rabbits and bears?
Rabbits and cats. It was
rabbits and cats. Can we just give her a shout out for the rabbits and cats? Because I could see that happening. I could see them fighting. I could see them fighting over things, toys,
it was
food.
So musical.
And I could see one of them going to jail. I could see that.
When I tell you, it was a whole situation in that back seat for the 40 minutes.
My question is, why don't you have a Netflix show? Because that right there.
I feel like I just need to put up a GoPro in the car and in the house and just keep them running all the time.
Just someone to animate it. We can find an animator, right? And get that animated cats versus hares.
Rabbits.
Right. Fight. Just doing the old style of Street Fighter.
I mean, it was fabulous. Because so at one point when she started, I was like, in my head, and so grateful many times, because I want her to have a full self-esteem. I want her to always believe that she is the most wonderful being on the planet. And so I'm really grateful that a lot of times I'm forced to not, the way the car is designed, there's no way that she could see my face, because when she first started, this look at my face was like, I know she's not going, I know this is not happening right. I don't have this in me right now. Doesn't she hear the radio going? Like, what? Why are these pop songs not good enough for her? They're good enough for me.
She don't check for pop. She's not checking for your pop. You can leave all that Ariana Grande for the next one, right?
All of them. Don't need
She's
it.
doing
No
originals. Show tunes, baby. TV show tunes.
And at some point, I mean, it had sound effects. Like there was not like that. How it started was, and I don't know how loud this was.
Service. She's giving my company a run for the money.
Hello, how loud this would be, but she was like she was knocking on the window. She was like, there is a how was it? There's a cat knocking on my door. Cat knocking on my door.
Let me tell you right now. First of all, that's a foot stomp. That's a foot stomp groove right there. And and you know what? I'm just going to go on and put my business in the streets. This summer when I drop, there's a cat knocking on my door. And Dr. Nikki sues me for stealing her daughter's stuff. I'm going to go on and say, Your Honor, listen to the podcast. I stole it. The beat was tight. The lyrics were on point. And the house kids were, cat knocking on my door. Cat knocking on. We had to have it in the club.
Oh, my God. And so very shortly after my irritation started, I just had to say to myself, you know what? She is happy. And she is always happiest when she's creating, and just let her have it. And then at some point, I was into it, well, what's gonna happen next? Because it was like a saga.
You got in the story. But I just want to say something too.
Because if you can't beat them, join them.
Right.
If you can't beat them, join them.
to the point that you're making about being stressed and being overwhelmed, I think there's something else that people often forget. And I hear people say things like being a mother is an easy job or whatever foolishness.
What? Who said that? No mother ever.
Right.
No mother.
Well, you know
ever.
what's funny? I was looking at this comedian Bill Burr, and he did this whole set about being a mother is the easiest job, and you basically get paid to put someone in time out when they get on your nerves. And it was just the way he said it in his attempt to be funny. And I get it. It's comedy. There's always that degree of, quote, truth as a comedian. But I get it. You're trying to be funny. Get you. But the thing I find interesting about that is at that point, you're in that car driving from point A to point B in Houston traffic, something I wish on no one, right? And what you really want, you put on those pop tunes because you just wanted to escape. You wanted peace. You wanted to not be a part of anything because you were tired. You had all this stuff that happened during the day and all the stuff you still had to do before you're able to put your head on a pillow. And here comes your daughter. And you have to fight the urge to be annoyed by her just being a child. That adds stress to your day. And I don't think that people get that. You know what I mean? Those choices that you have to make in those moments to be a good mother.
Right. To not go, would you please be quiet? Right. Can we just be quiet? Like,
as we all know, we've all seen those people at the local grocery. I told you to shut up. You wait till we get back home. Like, we've all seen that, right? So we understand what that's like.
And for me, again, to be completely transparent, I've had a moment like that or two or three or four with her over the years. But that's always my canary in the mine, as they say. When I don't have the capacity to have that internal dialogue that I had with myself and let her continue to have her moment, when I lose the capacity to be able to suck it in, take some deep breaths, get yourself together, let's focus on the priority. When I can't do that, when I go straight from be quiet, I can't handle it, that's how I know I'm distressed. That's how I know it's time to put the brakes on some stuff. I got to bring it back in because she didn't sign up for all of the foolishness that I've signed up for.
Right. So it's about finding those indicators in your life that clearly speak to a pattern of distress. Perfect
and for
sense.
some people, it's hard for some people, especially if you live in a context in which everybody is in a state of chronic stress and everybody's engaging in dysfunctional behavior, it gets really hard for you to be able to decide, well, where's the line in the sand for me?
And could it not also be said that that's why in today's society, social media is so appealing? Because it does allow you to sit on your phone and escape, and you can look up and be like, oh my God, it's 3 hours later. I've been on Instagram. I've been on Snapchat. I've been liking. I've been live streaming. I've been doing all these things. You can do all of these things and avoid the fact that the time may come when you don't have money for that data plan that you're using up.
Right. Except, here's what's interesting. Except what the research on social media and psychological well-being says right now is those people who passively engage in social media. So the people that are just scrolling through and just looking, reading other people's posts, looking at other people's things, they're not creating content on their own. They're not engaging with quote unquote real friends and family. They're not doing that part. They're just passively participating. They tend to have higher scores of depression than individuals that are engaging more actively in social media. Wow. So it's really it's a false balm if you're just like looking at other people's lives. Like if you're just scrolling through the gram, that does have negative psychological impact on you.
Interesting. Okay. Mm-hmm. You want to talk more about that? Why would that be?
So I think for me, to be a broken record, I think it goes back to this social comparison theory. It's one thing if you're like, oh, those boots are cute. Let me show you my cute boots, right? Where you still have a sense of, here's my contribution. Here's my sense of self. Here's how I want to engage others, or here are the things that are important to me. even if all you're doing is just reposting other people's posts, or like I follow a lot of social and political movement outlets, and I tend to repost. Like if you're only